Hello everyone, this is Professor Sexton with a video lecture on using commas. Let me begin by stating that the using commas document can be found in course documents. So what you may want to do is you may want to go to course documents, look at the using commas document first, and then watch this video lecture, or watch this video lecture first, and then go review the using commas course document. I'm going to start by bringing up that document. And what I'll do in this lecture, which is going to be brief, is just kind of go over some of the rules about using commas. I am not going to go over all of them in detail. So what you'll just want to do is to make sure that you review the document for yourself. So the thing about commas are, of all the punctuation marks in English, it's probably one of the most difficult ones to master because there are numerous rules determining when and where one should be used. And oftentimes the factors determining their usage is quite subtle. And so what the handout that you're seeing does is it try to give you some guidance on what to do with those. So for instance, some of the times that you do want to use commas is when you have items in a list. So what you do is you use a comma to separate those items, such as Kim loves ice cream, comma, books, comma, and kittens. This comma here is known as the serial comma or the Oxford comma, and in a lot of cases, people leave it out. Um, it doesn't matter to me whether you put it there or not, but the only thing that I ask is that you be consistent with your usage. So if you decide not to put it there when you're getting lists, just make sure that you don't. You do that consistently throughout whatever paper or document that you're writing. Um, However, you do need to notice that in some cases, the serial comma is necessary for clarity. So if you look at this example here, I dedicate this award to my parents, comma, Jane Austen, and Albert Einstein. Without the comma after Jane Austen, it seems as if that Jane Austen and Albert Einstein are the person's parents. But that's not what the person means. The person is dedicating the award to the parents, Jane Austen, and Albert Einstein. So to make sure that there is a difference between these two, the comma there is necessary. So once again, you want to use those commas in terms of clarity. You also use commas with compound sentences. So if you have two complete sentences joined with a coordinating conjunction, which is discussed in another video lecture, you want to put a comma between those the two sentences and before the coordinating conjunction, such as here. Uh, Typically, you also use commas after introductory elements in a sentence, such as unfortunately, comma, the cold weather ruined our weekend plans. Before eating, comma, the family said grace. So those are examples of when you want to use commas. Um, if you have an interrupter or parenthetical element in a sentence, you want to use a comma. And think of an interrupter or parenthetical element as additional information that isn't absolutely necessary for the sentence. So if you take that information out, the sentence will still be clear and still make sense. So for example, if you see here, the weather, comma, I was happy to see, comma, was beginning to clear. I was happy to see is a parenthetical element or additional information. It doesn't necessarily have to be there because this sentence could easily read the weather was beginning to clear. So if you're putting those into a sentence, you'll want to separate those out by a comma. This one with non-restrictive clause is going to be a little bit complicated. So let me explain. A non-restrictive clause is a group of words that isn't necessary for the meaning of the sentence. So once again, it's also additional information. So if you're doing that, that can also be enclosed in commas. So Posey's Cafe, comma, which Andreas recommended, comma, is a fantastic restaurant. In this sentence, you don't really need to know that Andreas recommended this restaurant. So once again, that's additional information. So you enclose it in commas because without it, the sentence would still work. Posey's Cafe is a fantastic restaurant. However, when there are restricted clauses, you do not need commas. And a restricted clause is that the comma is necessary to specify information. So for instance, if we have a sentence that read, the cafe that Andre is recommended is a fantastic restaurant, you need that Andre is recommended to specify what cafe is being referenced in this sentence. Because if you say the cafe is a fantastic restaurant, the question then is what cafe? And so that Andre is recommended is needed there. Um, Other times when you have a question tag, so when you're doing something with quotations, this is also with quotations. I'm not going to go over that in detail because it's rare that you're going to be doing that in this class. And most of the time, too, most of you know how to do that. Commas inside quotation marks, so you see here, commas with direct address. So if the sentence is addressing someone, mom, comma, I can't find my shoes, or hello, comma, Amir, because in those sentences, someone is talking to someone. Um, Commas in terms of date, where you have July 4th, comma 1776. So those are some comma rules. Now here's a deal that you should know about commas. In a lot of cases, commas are not going to, a misplaced comma or a missing comma is not going to interfere with the content of the sentence and impede people understanding what it is that you're intending. But to make sure that your writing is as clear as possible and that your reader is understanding what it is that you intend, you do want to make sure that you're using commas accurately. Here are some commas don't. You don't want to use a comma to separate a subject from its verb. It's like, for instance, here, my friend Maya, comma, is a wonderful singer. This comma is unnecessary because Maya is your subject and is a wonderful singer is your verb or your predicate. And so you don't need the comma there. That's unnecessary. You don't need commas between two nouns in a compound subject or object. Like for instance, Kiara will wear sparkly red blazer, comma, and high heels. That's incorrect because you only have two items there. So that comma is unnecessary. If there was a third item, then you'll take that and out, add a comma, and then and the third item. So that's another reason or another example when you don't want to use a comma. You don't need commas between two verbs. These rules here are something that was covered in another thing with comma splices, where a comma is used incorrectly between two complete sentences. I'm going to skip that. Comma before but. If the but begins a new sentence, then you want the comma before it. But if the but doesn't begin a new sentence, you don't need the comma. So for instance, if you look here, my teacher is tough but fair. Because what follows but here is not a complete sentence, a comma is not necessary. So let me continue. And then there's one more page here about information, comma before and. When you have a list that contains only two items, don't use a comma before the and. So for instance, my dog Charlie is cute, comma, and smart. That's incorrect because you only have two items. You only need the comma if there's three items. This list of comma do's and don'ts is not as long as you would think. I mean, it is 5 pages. And as I said before, it's something that you want to review. My advice about commas is this. If you are unsure of why a comma needs to be in a sentence, so if you're writing a sentence and you put a comma in, but you can't think of a particular rule for why that comma needs to be there, chances are that comma doesn't need to be there. I think oftentimes what we do is we add commas when we don't need them. And I think sometimes it's because we have long sentences and we look at a long sentence and we think, okay, this sentence cannot be right because how can it be this long without any punctuation in it? And I think in those cases, what we tend to do is we put punctuation in, particularly commas, just because we feel like we need to break up the sentence. But if there's no rule for you putting that comma in, what you could be doing is you could be interfering with the clarity of that sentence. So one of the things that I've always told students, and one of the things that I try to practice myself, if I cannot think of a justifiable reason for why that comma needs to be there, I tend to leave it out. So as I said before, review the document and just get a sense of when you should use commas and when you should not use commas. Okay, I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Take care, everyone. Bye.